Okay, so in this video we are going to write some code to simulate a dice throw, and it's like a follow-up video from the coin toss video. So it's basically the same thing, but we will simulate a dice throw instead of a coin toss, and we will do it in the same way we did in the coin toss by using random. So let's start with that. We'll import random and then we'll define a function. Can call this throw dice, and it will return something. So what we will do is basically the same as we did in the coin toss video. We'll use the random a random object and a method or function called randint, and we will then specify a interval. So there's 6 sides on a die, so it will be an interval of 1 to 6, or in computers starting with 0 to 5. That should be the correct interval. So we'll start simple and just that should be it. But we need to have some sort of input output stuff as well. So we'll call that question actually we don't need that just yet, but we want to throw the dice, so what we'll do is basically just throw the dice. That should be it. So we save this and we'll try it out. Okay. Okay, we did use the function, but we didn't print the function, so we need to do that like so, and then we can simulate this coin toss. So it just throws, we throw the coin, no, the dice every time we execute this. Okay, there's a problem here. We're just going from 0 to 5. So actually we should have used the other interval, 1 to 6. And now we can try this again. Yeah, and now we have the correct. So that's the simple stuff. If we want to do something a little bit more elaborate, we can now say how many dice throws. And we want to define a new function . And what we'll simply do is we will use the function we just created, and we will put that in a range. So let's say right, so we want to count uh, how many ones, twos, or threes we get. So we will do a we will have to do a case. So we could use a switch case, we can use a if else. So if all right, okay, so we need to initialize a few variables. Twos, okay, so what we're doing is we run this we run this function, the amount of times that we're asking for a question, that would be like 5 times, 10 times. So we'll run it from we will run it 10 times by using a for loop. But then we will yeah, and then we have to call the function. So we throw dice, and then if the result is 1, we will we'll add 1 to the count, and then we will use this if else case for the rest of them. We could use a switch case as well, but we'll use this. No, wait. If it's 2, if it's 1, it should be we should increase the count of ones. And if it's 2, we should increase the count of 2, and so on. Right. And then we should return something. So what we want is some sort of count of what was the case, or what happened, like how many. But we can only return one thing, or we could return two things maybe. We can return an array of this. So we would probably want to put this data in an array, the result. So let's call that, we can start up the array. Okay, so we needed to add an array here, and then we would need to put these values 1, 2, 3, and so on into this array. So this might be a little tricky, but we need to access the array. So we could do something like this. One. Okay, this turns out to be a little bit more difficult than I thought. Okay, so new idea. Instead of using an array, we should use, or could use, a dictionary. So let's call this dict result. And the reason for that is a dictionary is more, is like a key value or two pairs, and that looks kind of what this structure looks like. We want to say how many ones, amount of how many ones. So like maybe it's a string that says ones, and then there's an int or number saying how many, the count. Like this. It would be ones, and then you would have a count, say it's 4, like that, and so on. Right, and then it's just a comma separator. Okay, so now how do we get this, the data we got in our little for loop, into the dictionary? Well, we'll just do the same thing again. And while we're at it, we might as well change this because this looks a little bit crazy. So instead of saying amount question, we'll just say n, and we'll use we'll say n for this function, because if we could use anything, it's like a placeholder, but we'll just use n because it's just a word, or a letter instead of a whole word, and it looks a little bit better. Okay. So that is what we can do. Okay, so now we have the same range, but instead now of calling that function, we will just simply want to put our result into the dictionary. So we have our indexer. So I believe this is how we should approach it. Simply say once, and then actually I don't think we need to use the for loop in this case. We can just, I think we should be able to just put it in here, because we have already completed the for loop, the run of the for loop. So we have all the results already, but we just want to put it in this dictionary. And now we can return this result, but we will return a dictionary instead of this variable result. I think this looks better. Right, so now what we'll do is we'll need to print this stuff. And if we print the dictionary, simply do that. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's complaining a little bit about this. Right, another parenthesis, I think, and now we try again. Okay, so we don't need the int, and then maybe we don't need the extra. Okay. Okay, so now we need some indentation as well. Right. Okay, let's try then. Right, so we could we're just going to print the result of this function after we've called it using the question variable, as we defined here, which will be a input argument into this function. So these two doesn't need to match, but this is the value we're putting into this function. And now we just want to return like the result of this function. after calling it. So we try to print this. So let's see what happens. Let's try 10 throws. Okay, so in this case we got 2 1s, 1 2s, 1 3s, and so on. So that's pretty much pretty good. We can see some sort of distribution here. And let's try here. We got something else. We see some sort of distribution, but maybe we want it in some percentages or something like that. What we would need to do then is we could do like a different we would probably want to return this in percentages. We could keep on building in this function, but then it sort of goes everywhere, does everything. Kind of goes against the idea of a more modular design, but we could do this like a huge function, or we could separate this into something more manageable. Okay, so yeah, you can, it's possible to do this more, to get the actual distribution of this in percentage or something like that. But I think that might be an interesting exercise for the viewer. Maybe you're see how you can do this, or you can give it a go and try to convert this the results we got here. You should be able to convert that to a percentages. So say what percentage of ones did we get in 10, or how many dice throws we put in. So a percentage of throwing the dice 10 times, how many ones did we get, how many twos, how many threes, and so on. So like in this case we saw here, we got 100 throws and we had 20 ones, 18 twos, 17 threes. So what's the percentage of this? You should just be able to divide this number with this number and multiply by 100, and you should get the percentage. And see if you can come up with a way to express this in the program, like another dictionary maybe, or another data structure you might find which can hold these values. There's many ways to do it, but yeah, I think that's a good exercise to try. So this was how you could simulate a dice throw in Python.